Welcome back to Mighty Habits. I'm Steven,
And I'm Mary.
and we're diving deep into a book that you might have heard of.
I think a few people might have heard of this one.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus by John Gray.
It's a classic
Yeah, it really is.
from 1992.
Really sparked a lot of conversation, a lot of debate, maybe even some arguments.
Definitely hit a nerve.
It did.
Yeah.
So let's unpack some of the core ideas here and see what's going on, see what the controversy is all about.
Sounds good.
Okay.
The basic premise of the book is that men and women have fundamentally different communication styles
Okay.
and emotional needs.
All right.
To the point where it's almost like they're from different planets.
I'm seeing where the Mars and Venus thing comes in.
Exactly.
So men are from Mars.
Tough, action-oriented Mars.
Oh.
And women are from Venus.
More emotionally expressive.
More relational.
Gotcha.
So the book gives examples like men retreating to their caves when they're stressed.
Okay.
They just need some solitude. Right.
Whereas women want to talk it out and connect.
Oh, I've definitely seen that.
Right.
So this resonated with a lot of people back then.
It really did.
And it still does, I think.
Yeah, I think it still does.
Now, before we go too far, let's talk about the author himself, John Gray.
Okay.
So from what I've read, he doesn't have a background as like a, traditional couples therapist or anything like that.
Right. His background is actually as a yoga instructor.
Okay.
And he got his PhD through a distance learning program.
Interesting.
Yeah. Which I'm not saying,
Not knocking it.
no, not knocking it, but it's just an interesting.
It's just a piece of context
Yeah.
to have when we think about how this book became this huge phenomenon.
Right. Because it was a phenomenon.
It really was.
This book was on the New York Times bestseller list
Yeah.
for over a decade.
Over a decade.
Millions and millions of copies sold worldwide.
So people were really eating this up.
They were devouring it,
Yeah.
talking about Martians and Venusians.
Like it was a real thing. Like, wow.
It really permeated the culture.
It really did.
And it makes you wonder, did it actually shape a generation's understanding of relationships?
That's a really interesting question.
I think it's hard to deny that it had some impact.
Yeah, for sure.
The book's language, the
Yeah.
concepts, they were everywhere,
Yeah.
influencing how people talked about their relationships, how they approached their relationships.
But as with anything that gets super popular,
Yeah.
there's always another side of the story.
Oh, absolutely.
So the criticisms started coming out pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, one of the biggest criticisms is that it just oversimplifies things.
Okay.
Like gender differences.
Right.
Presents this very binary view of men are like this and women are like that.
So it's like cramming everyone into these two little boxes labeled Mars and Venus.
Exactly.
When in reality, we know that things are so much more complex than that.
So for nuance.
And it leads to the second big problem,
Okay.
which is that there's a lack of scientific backing for a lot of these claims. A lot of it's anecdotal.
Yeah.
He draws on some psychological research, but a lot of it is just his own observations and experiences.
Like take my word for it kind of
Yeah.
thing, which when we're talking about relationships seems a little bit shaky.
Yeah, a little iffy.
Yeah. And then that leads to the next problem, which is that, since it's not based on solid evidence, it might actually be reinforcing some harmful stereotypes about men and women.
By portraying these stark differences,
Yeah.
it could contribute to essentialist views of gender,
Okay.
which can be limiting
Yeah.
and perpetuate inequalities.
So instead of seeing each other as individuals,
Yeah.
we start seeing these fixed categories
Right.
like, oh, well, men are like this, women
Yeah.
are like that.
It's dangerous territory.
It is.
Yeah.
And then that also could lead to some problematic communication strategies.
Yeah. For example, the book suggests that when women express their feelings,
Okay.
men should jump into fix-it mode instead of just listening and empathizing.
So instead of validating her emotions, he's trying to solve a problem that she might not even want solved.
Exactly.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It can be.
Yeah.
Definitely lead to more misunderstanding and frustration.
Which is the opposite of what we're going for.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe this simple, appealing approach that the book offers,
Yeah,
maybe it creates more problems than it solves.
potentially.
Yeah.
And it's important to know that there are other perspectives out there
Okay.
that challenge this whole Mars-Venus paradigm.
So you're talking about, we have these other sources,
Yeah.
the myth of Mars and Venus,
Yes.
and the gender similarities hypothesis.
These offer some really fascinating insight.
Okay, interesting.
Instead of emphasizing these vast differences,
Okay.
they focus on the many similarities between genders.
Okay.
And they look at things like socialization,
Right.
power dynamics,
Uh-huh.
individual personality traits to explain communication issues.
So maybe we're not from different planets,
Maybe not.
but we're just speaking slightly different dialects,
Maybe.
formed by our experiences, by social roles.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
That's a nice way to put it.
A little more nuanced, I think.
A little more realistic.
So we've got this hugely popular book that's been, praised by some,
Yeah,
but slammed by others,
absolutely.
oversimplifying things, lacking a scientific basis.
Right.
And then we've got these alternative perspectives
Uh-huh.
that offer a totally different take.
Totally
It's
different.
fascinating.
It is fascinating.
Yeah.
But before we get too serious,
Oh.
I have to share this little tidbit from the book that always makes me chuckle.
All right, lay on me.
So John Gray actually suggests that
Great.
women's use of modal verbs,
Modal verbs. Okay.
would that these contribute to men not helping with chores?
Yes. Yeah.
He argues that when a woman says, "Could you please take out the trash?"
Okay.
a man might hear that as optional instead of a direct request.
So it's the modal verb's fault
It's the modal verbs.
that men don't do the chores.
You got it?
That's amazing.
I know, right?
Wow.
It's a bit out there.
It is a bit out there.
But it highlights the book's tendency to attribute these relationship problems
Yeah.
to these seemingly minor communication quirks,
Gosh.
rather than addressing deeper underlying issues.
Like blaming grammar
Right.
for a lack of shared responsibility in the house.
Exactly.
That's pretty funny.
It's fun.
But also a little alarming if people are taking this seriously.
Yeah, a little bit alarming.
So, listeners, as we go further into this topic, we want to hear from you.
Yeah.
Did men are from Mars, women are from Venus have any impact on your understanding of relationships?
Did it help?
Did it hinder your communication?
Share your thoughts.
Yeah, we want to hear from you.
And stay tuned because things are about to get really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
We've got some surprising twists coming up.
Including that FDA warning letter.
We're going to get to that.
We will
Yeah.
stay with us.
Okay, so that FDA warning letter.
Yeah, this is a wild one.
It is. It is.
You don't hear about this every day.
No, not every day a self-help guru gets in trouble with the FDA.
So what happened?
Well, John Gray was selling a dietary supplement
Okay.
and making some pretty bold claims about it,
Like what?
claiming that it could treat things like depression and anxiety.
Wow.
And the FDA stepped in,
Yeah.
issued a warning letter because these claims weren't backed up by any scientific evidence.
So he was kind of venturing into medical territory
Yeah,
without the research to back it up.
without the research.
That's a big deal.
That is a big deal.
It kind of makes you wonder, if he was oversimplifying or even misrepresenting things in his relationship advice, too.
It definitely raises some questions
Yeah.
about the credibility of his claims.
If he's willing to exaggerate the benefits of a supplement,
Right.
maybe he's doing the same thing with his relationship advice.
Yep.
Like, you could end up with a relationship supplement that's all hype and no substance.
Exactly.
So it's a good reminder to be skeptical,
Absolutely.
especially when it comes to advice about something as complicated as relationships.
Absolutely.
So let's shift gears a bit and talk about the impact of this book on actual relationship dynamics.
Okay.
Did it help or hinder communication between couples?
That's a tough one to answer.
Yeah.
Relationships are just so complex.
They are?
But I have heard from people who said the book either helps them understand their partner better
Yeah.
or it created new points of friction.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's almost like the book acted as this relationship litmus test.
Okay.
People saw in it what they were already predisposed to believe about gender differences.
So for some people, the Mars-Venus framework was validating.
Very validating.
Like, he's not listening because he's a Martian retreating to his cave.
Right.
It's not personal, it's just how men are.
It's just how they are.
So it kind of offered this sense of relief,
Yeah.
explaining away those moments of disconnect.
Yeah.
But for others, the book's emphasis on these differences, it might have actually amplified existing tensions.
Right. Instead of focusing on their shared values,
Right.
shared experiences, they might have gotten stuck in this us versus them mentality.
Like, well, he's from Mars, so of course he doesn't get my need to talk about my feelings.
Exactly.
And that can be really damaging to a relationship.
Very damaging.
Creates a wall instead of a bridge.
Yeah. And on the flip side, men might have felt pressured to conform to that stereotype.
Of the
It's
stove.
a stoic, problem-solving Martian.
So instead of bringing couples closer,
Yeah.
the book might have driven them further apart.
It's possible.
So it's kind of a cautionary tale
It is.
about the power of simple explanations and the importance of thinking critically
Yes.
when it comes to relationship advice.
Absolutely.
So where does that leave us?
Well,
if we can't rely on these simplistic formulas,
Right.
what can we do to foster better understanding?
That's the big question, isn't it? It is. I don't think there's an easy answer,
No.
but I think it starts with a willingness to move beyond stereotypes.
Okay.
See each other as individuals.
So recognizing that we all have our own communication styles, our own needs, our own ways of processing emotions.
Regardless of gender.
Yeah, regardless of gender.
Exactly.
It's about really listening,
listening.
trying to understand their perspective,
Yeah.
being willing to learn and grow together.
Absolutely.
It's not about finding the perfect formula or deciphering some secret code.
Right.
It's about building a genuine connection.
Yeah.
Well said.
Thank you.
This has been really insightful.
It has.
I feel like we've peeled back the layers,
Yeah.
gained a more nuanced understanding of the book's impact and limitations.
For sure.
So to wrap things up, what are some key takeaways?
Well, I think first and foremost, we need to be skeptical
Okay.
of any relationship advice,
Yeah.
no matter how popular it is,
Right.
just because it's a bestseller.
Doesn't mean it's the gospel truth.
Exactly.
We have to think critically.
Consider the source, the evidence, and alternative viewpoints.
And in this case, with men are from Mars, women are from Venus,
Yeah.
while the book might have resonated with some, it
This.
also really oversimplifies complex issues.
And lacks a solid scientific foundation.
The advice, while maybe well-intentioned, could reinforce harmful stereotypes
It could.
and even create new misunderstandings.
Yeah, it's a reminder that there's no quick fix, no
Yeah.
magic formula.
It takes work,
Effort, communication.
willingness to see each other as individuals,
As individuals.
not these gender stereotypes.
Right.
So, listeners, we want to hear from you.
We do.
What are your thoughts?
Did it have a positive or negative impact on your relationships?
What advice would you give to couples who are looking to improve their communication?
Share your thoughts with us on social media.
And if you're hungry for more thought-provoking deep dives like this one,
Be sure to subscribe to Mighty Habits.
we explore all sorts of interesting topics.
Science and technology, history, culture, you name it.
We release new episodes every week.
So hit that subscribe button.
Join us on this journey of discovery.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Until next time, stay curious.
It's interesting to think about how this book, despite all the controversy, really tapped into something that a lot of people were struggling with.
Yeah,
Communication and relationships.
for sure.
Even if the solutions it offered were oversimplified, it got people talking about these issues.
Yeah, it's like it gave people a shared language, even if that language wasn't always accurate or helpful in the long run.
Right.
But it brought these conversations about gender and communication to the forefront.
It sparked a dialogue.
It did.
And that dialogue has continued to evolve as we
Yeah.
learn more about relationships and gender dynamics.
So it was like a stepping stone
Yeah, a starting point.
for a larger conversation that's still ongoing.
Exactly.
And as we've seen, there are these alternative perspectives out there that offer a much more nuanced understanding.
Like the myth of Mars and Venus.
Yeah.
That directly challenges Gray's premise,
Okay.
arguing that men and women aren't nearly as different as
Bro.
the book suggests.
And then the gender similarities hypothesis
Yes.
goes even further,
That's,
highlighting all this research, showing that men and women are actually more alike than different.
in most psychological traits.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
So maybe instead of focusing on these supposed planetary differences,
Yeah.
we should be looking at the common ground,
The shared experiences.
the things that connect us
Yes.
as human beings,
Exactly.
and recognize that communication breakdowns,
Yeah.
they often stem from individual differences,
Uh-huh.
personality styles,
Right.
learned behaviors.
Rather than some inherent gender divide.
It's about seeing our partners as individuals,
Yes.
not as representatives of some alien species,
Exactly.
and being willing to put in the effort to understand
Understand
their unique perspective.
their communication style.
That's where the real connection happens.
That's where it's at.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a real eye-opener.
It has.
We've gone from the surface of this pop culture phenomena
Mm-hmm.
to a much deeper understanding of its complexities,
Yeah.
its flaws.
And its potential impact.
So what are some key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, I think the biggest one is we need to be critical thinkers.
Yeah.
We need to question assumptions
Okay.
and be open to different perspectives.
And remember that there's no one-size-fits-all solution
No.
when it comes to love and relationships.
Every couple is unique.
And finding what works best takes effort, communication.
And a willingness to grow together.
So listeners, as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to hear from you.
We do.
What are your thoughts on Men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
Did it have a positive or negative impact on your relationships?
What advice would you give to couples who are looking to improve their communication?
Share your insights with us on social media.
And if you enjoy this conversation,
If you're hungry for more thought-provoking deep dives,
be sure to subscribe to Mighty Habits.
we explore a wide range of topics.
We release new episodes every week.
So hit that subscribe button.
And join us on this journey of discovery.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Until next time, stay curious.